That's right. We're here. Oh, wait, it's not Friday. You guys are early. Well, hey, listen, the draft is a thing, and we have a very extra special episode tonight for many reasons, but we'll get into that in just a minute. Of course, I have to bring in my personal champion alongside me. Me as Kyle Nash, the student of the game of Jaguar Report. I bring in my personal champion, Travis Holmes of Big Cat Country. I'm so excited about what we're doing, and I almost forgot to talk about me. That's how excited I am. Even with my huge ego, I forgot to talk about me, Travis. What do we make of that?
I don't know what to tell you. I'm happy to see you excited. This is good.
Well, hey, listen, man. This is a guy you and I both follow closely. We've had the opportunity to see this man work in person. And hey, listen, I'm one of the people that does the thing daily. I'm not going to lie. I'm overtaking my son over to his daycare, and I have a little bit of Locked On Jaguars going on in the background. I probably gave it away anyway, but listen, this is a guy whose judgment and coverage of the Jaguars is always entertaining, always based, in fact. He's a guy that not only can he tell you who's good at running a fade, he can cut you a proper fine fade as well. My man, Anthony Wiggins, T-Wiggs of Locked On Jaguars. What's going on, man?
What's happening, fellas? Glad to be here, man. Y'all caught up with me. You got me, right?
Well, listen. First of all, we had to get you. You're the first guest we've had here on the Duval Dive, and we couldn't think of anybody else better to break the ice for that particular piece. And by the way, something an aside, the best James Harrison impression I've ever seen done by this man right here. So there you go.
Oh, really? Really?
So, hey, listen, it's one of those if you know kind of things. But gentlemen, let's get right into it here. I know that you just did your mock T-Wiggs for Locked On Jaguars, and the draft conversation is in the air. There's been a lot of movement. Just with all the free agency moves, that's kind of changed the direction. It seems pretty clear that the Jaguars are going to go one of two places. Probably corner or receiver seems to be the smart money. But I'm going to ask you guys this first. Travis, I know your answer, I think, but I'm going to go to T-Wiggs first here because, listen, I don't know how closely you follow Travis's Twitter feed, T-Wig, but this man has gotten Jared Verse to the Jaguars at least a half a dozen times in his mocks. Does that make sense to you if he's there at 17?
It does. And it might not make as much sense as it once did, but it's still, for the reasons that I had them possibly taking Jared Verse, it still does make a lot of sense. The only thing is it would be viewed as a luxury now, as opposed to a necessity. I look at a third edge rusher just like I look at a nickel corner. I mean, if they're in passing situations, 9 times out of 10, they're going to slide somebody inside and they're going to have all of these guys out there anyway. And I watched a lot of Ryan Nielsen tape. I saw guys standing up. I saw one play. It looked like there was only one guy with his hand on the ground and all the other dudes were standing up. I thought they were shooting dice the way it looked. You know what I'm saying? So, it's like if they're going to do that and they're just going to say the hell with it, we just going to rush the passer with everybody. I get it. They're probably in a position to draft somebody that the team doesn't really deserve to be there. And let me clear that up. What I mean, had they made the playoffs, they'd be picking 23rd, probably, right? And people would be, folks would say, just take the best player available. We don't care, because they would still hold it optimistic that what the guys can do that are on the team. Because they crashed and burned at the end of the year the way they did, that one game is like 7 games to everybody, because now they were 8-3 and all of a sudden they're not even in the playoffs. So it's almost like they didn't finish one game out. They kind of finished like 5 or 6 games out, right? So people are looking at it a lot differently, saying now we need an impact player. And I did something yesterday. I said, draft a guy for a career, not for a year. And I think they have to make sure that they lead with drafting the dude that's going to end up having the best career, as opposed to the guy that just helps you line up and look better next year, even though he's not better long term.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense too. And the one thing you mentioned, kicking somebody inside, I feel like that's an opportunity to get Trayvon Walker to do what he's meant to do and be that versatility guy. I've heard you say it countless times about the Swiss Army knife on Locked On, talking about the versatility and guys able to do different things. Granted, Trayvon Walker's sack numbers will probably go down in that case if they do that sort of thing to kick him inside. Should they get Jared Verse? Should he do his thing? But I'm kind of with you with the luxury part. I mean, Travis and I both been talking about Yasir Abdullah and us not seeing anything he can do yet because of the injuries and all that. But I mean, Travis, check me if I'm doing anything wrong or talking anything wrong about we're talking about kicking Trayvon Walker inside because game guys notwithstanding, with the clackety clack going on or whatever, I feel like if Nielsen having man-to-man coverage is an essential part of his existence, because we know it is, the pass rush I think is essential, right?
I mean, I think I fully agree. I mean, that's we've always talked about that. Everybody just has their different opinions. Everybody has their different ways of building this team, and there's no right and wrong on this. This is all just based on our opinions, based on what we believe could be the most effective way. Cool. My thought process as a DB, I want to do what's best for the defensive backs. That's literally where my head's always at. So I'm like, no. Make that defensive front outrageous, and that's where my head's at. So I'm like, no, whether it's a defensive tackle or whether it's another edge or rotational piece, since we did have issues with that third person last season, yeah, I'm absolutely on board with that. And I if he's available, if it's someone like Verse, absolutely, or if it's someone like Johnny Newton, absolutely. Like that's where my head's at, because you can then be like Kansas City. You can draft that secondary, give those guys time to mold, time to learn, time to grow, and give them the room to make the mistakes, because your defensive front is just so dominant. They're only getting 2 to 3 seconds a snap. That's where my head's always at.
So let me throw this wild piece in there too, because as much as I've never been a fan, I know there's been a lot of talk of training up to do X, and whether it be that corner or that receiver, I'm not feeling that. And T-Wiggs, listen, I understand. You've helped me kind of understand it more clearly, as you tend to do every day on Locked On, a little bit more clearly about why that defensive end piece, especially now that Josh has his bag, drafting for a career, not a year. You have to understand, we all understand it. What needs to be understood in general is for all the players that need to be extended, right? So I'll ask this question just off the key in the spirit of the Jags already have enough people they got to pay coming up. We'll get into that in a minute. If I said to you, let's trade 17 as a member of the Jags front office, let's trade 17. Let's call up San Francisco and see what Brandon Ayuk's doing and offering up the 17. Is that too much of a reach in value in your mind?
I wouldn't give them the 17th pick for a player that I got to go pay. And by the way, just to make sure we're clear, I think Trayvon's fine at defensive end, but I just liked him as a defensive end in a 4-3 in an even front. I don't want him to be a 3 technique. I want him to be outside, but to be able to move inside whenever you get obvious passing situations. Some of the best pass rushers actually do slide inside. So we'll make that clear. But I don't think I'm not saying that you can't give a first round pick for Ayuk, but I'd finesse it first. I'd say, okay, 49ers, what's your breaking point? What's the threshold of what you take? If they tell me 28, then I'm moving back as many times as I can from 17 to 28 to get some more stuff. And then I make the trade at the last minute. And if we have that agreement, but they got to understand, if you're not willing to give me more stuff, then I'll get more stuff and I'll give you a first round pick. It just ain't going to be 17. I just think that's a little bit high to have to pay a guy to trade that out and pay him.
That's it. Well, okay. And yeah, that's a good point. Trading back is an option. And listen, this is proof he's good at the job, guys. That was the next question, is talking about trading back. But how far back in your mind, Travis, would you trade that first round pick? By the way, the reason why I'm asking you guys the draft question, acknowledged many times on this show, I am a horrible scout. So I let the people who know about that part handle that part. I won't get that right out there in the open. But how far back would you trade that 17 pick as part of the process? What would you guys expect to get?
I mean, if you're talking about getting another, if I would hope that you would at least be able to get another second, and maybe even a second and the fourth, second and the third, something like that out of it. I think that will absolutely make it reasonable, especially as deep as this draft is. I mean, you've seen all the mocks, seen all the meat of this draft. The depth of this draft is in that second and third round. So if you can get a chance to get two guys, get two bites at that apple, whether it's at corner, whether it's at receiver, whatever it may be, ooh boy, like that's a conversation piece.
I see you both smacking your lips. It's like, what's the GIF look like for those that are watching the stream? Right?
Yeah.
Birdman. That's right, Birdman.
Yes, man. That's kind of where I'm at. Like, yeah, if you can get into that late first, I mean, honestly, even as deep as the Kansas City pick, I mean, we're talking 32nd. I still have no problem. I don't blink at that. Like, that's out. Honestly, it's still a good spot to get a really good player, whether it's Xavier Worthy or one of the other fast receivers that's not necessarily as refined as those top three guys, but still quality good receivers, and you may have an opportunity to take another guy in the third or the fourth, and now you got two receivers, two bites of that apple. Again, I'm always going to be on board with that because, hey man, top three receivers, top five receivers, top 10 receivers bust all the time. If I can get two opportunities to make sure this works, and you're giving me that leeway to do it, yeah, I'm always going to be on board with that.
Now, mind you, if they make this move, they're getting Ayuk. So
Right,
now
that's their point.
They now use that. Now this is where all of those other players that you talk about in the second and third round, the guys that you hope, the Max Meltons and the Michael Halls. This is where all of that hard work that you do in scouting, because you never know where you're going to end up. This is how you can actually affect this team in more ways than one. You get a big time alpha receiver, you go ahead and make sure you pay him. Pay him now, because you won't be able to do stuff like this in a year or two, right? So even if you do give Trevor an extension, the extension doesn't kick in until it's supposed to kick in. So you go ahead and get this stuff done now. I'd make a move for it. I would finesse the pick a little bit, even if I ended up with just 2/3, or if I got a third and a second next year. That's another bite at the apple, like you say. I get a position sewn up, and then maybe even package that up with some stuff. You can now trade the compensatory picks, package that stuff up, and come right back up and get you 2 second-round picks. So there's some ways that you can go about doing it. There's more than one way to get this done, and I'm interested to see what happens. I think they're going to stand pat, though. If I had to guess right now, if you told me, Wig, bet your mortgage payment on it, I wouldn't. But if you told me I had to, I would say they're going to sit at 17 and take the player.
Now, hey, listen, as I'll put it this way, as a fellow non-degenerate, were I inclined to bet, I'm with you. I don't think they move off of 17. Moreover, everyone's pounding the table.
So can I confirm? You don't expect them to move up or down? Is that what you're saying, Wig?
Well, I wouldn't bet on it. I wouldn't necessarily say expect, because it's hard to expect anything if you don't know who the names are. There's going to be some names falling. There's going to be some people calling from later on, and without knowing the people, because that's one of my pet peeves. Because I said who I would take, on the show. I can't tell you who I took on the Locked On Podcast Network's draft, because that pick actually, it's live right now while we're recording, and it hasn't been made yet.
Okay.
Right. But I will tell you this. I said at 17, if this guy's there, this dude I'm taking, I don't care who else is there. And that's Quinion Mitchell. That's my pick.
Yeah.
I felt like he's the one dude that I don't think is going to get to 17, but if he does, I would not hesitate to take him. And I don't care who else is sitting there, within reason, of course.
Yeah.
He is the dude that I think makes the most sense for Jacksonville, because of the current situation, the contract situation, and then just the thing that he adds. Now, sitting at 17, I take Quinion Mitchell. If he's not there, it's not corner. So that's why, for me, it's not about, well, what position do you draft first? I would be like, okay, well, who's sitting there? It's like somebody asks you going to come to a party. Who's over there? Because if somebody over there I don't like, I ain't coming. So my thing is, you always ask that question, right? So I went from Quinion Mitchell, and then my next pick, I think it was somebody like Johnny Newton. So yeah. I don't necessarily do it by positions. I do it by people, because at the end of the day, positions don't go to the Hall of Fame. Individuals do.
Which, by the way, let the record show, Travis was preaching your gospel in our pregame show. So I'm glad to hear you reiterate it here too. But I like the point that people make the Hall of Fame. That part is the part that I'm writing it right down. I got my pencil right here. People make the hall. Okay, so speaking of people, let me drop this name on you too. And pardon me being beef inclined. Listen, Wiggs, you haven't seen the Aaron Evans original meme from my playing days there with my offensive lineman stuff on.
I see you.
You know, so I mean, this is why I'm beef intensive. This is what I do. It annoys the people who listen on the audio podcast, but whatever. They know the painting's there by now. Anyways, Byron Murphy. Listen, I love that Eric Armstead, as a guy who is a 49er fan born but covers the Jags, it was a whole different roller coaster. But it was time for Eric Armstead to leave the Niners, and then him ending up being an upgrade over what they had once, especially with Fatukasi being out the door. Byron Murphy is a good idea in my mind if he's a second defensive tackle in a 4-3 front. Would you take that name at 17?
I would not. And this is just personal preference. I'm not saying he won't be good. I don't like dudes built like that.
That's fair.
Byron Murphy built like the dude that is a bouncer at a strip club. I mean, he's short. He's real strong. He probably looks way stronger with his shirt off than he does with it on. And I just don't like dudes like that, man. It just reminds me of the guy that was like a grown man when y'all were kids, and then when you got grown, he stayed the same size. And you know what I'm saying? That's just, and it's just like, to me, I see the stuff that he does, and I just don't think that 330-pound guys week after week in the NFL, not in college, that he's going to be able to sustain going down to one knee and using that as leverage and being the small guy who plays bigger. That stuff carries you to a certain extent, but usually you need a whole bunch of other stuff. And I know he probably tested faster than Johnny Newman. I don't like a small guy depending on power so much, because you're not going to be at 6 feet, 297 pounds. You ain't overpowering nobody in the NFL. So the thing that he leads with, I believe it works against young men. I don't think it works against older men. And I may be wrong, but if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. It's just some players. I'm wrong about Zion Williamson. I don't like basketball players that walk like that. You know what I'm saying? So it's like I got some silly stuff with me, but I'm just being honest with you, and I would not take him. I wouldn't.
No, and there's plenty of there to be said there. If you're building for a career, wear and tear and the ability to withstand it is certainly part of that makeup. I can't front on that. And, that fits perfectly with the Zion Williamson comp there too. Like, what's been his biggest problem? Staying durable, staying healthy. And now, granted, I don't know that Byron would be asked to hit the gym and lose weight as much as Zion is. It would have a weight requirement. As a separate conversation in the difference between the two sports. Let me shift it to this direction. And Travis, I know we've kind of talked about this some on previous episodes.
Go ahead.
But for me, now that Josh Allen's paid, I'm taking Trevor's extension and putting that into what I would call Thanos status, as in it is inevitable. That leaves the following guys who I would and by the way, I almost forgot, Foye has been paid, so we could take him off the list, right? But the remaining guys who I expect to ask for an upgrade in cash, who have earned it, let's be honest, Andre Sisco, Tyson Campbell, Travis Etienne. Who do you pay? It's basically pay, kick the can, let go would be the name of this game, right? Travis, let me start with you on this one. Who gets paid? With whom do you kick the can down the road, and who do you let go? I already know your answer because you're a DB. Go.
Come on, man. Yeah, this ain't even a question for me. Like you pay Cisco, and honestly, I would hope.
Go first. Okay, I lost that one. Go ahead.
No, I'm a fan of paying Cisco. I especially if you can pay him before he explodes in this defense. Like we have Bates, and if that occurs, the price of a brick today and the price of the brick tomorrow. Like you can try to cut it off at the head before he explodes, or you can try to knock it out like most good teams do a year in advance. Cool. I would hope to get that done. That would then mean that it's between ETN and Oh goodness.
Tyson Campbell.
And Campbell, honestly, for me, is a coin flip on how he's going to play this season. But I feel more comfortable with the play of Cisco over the play of Campbell, so that's why Cisco's my sign. ETN's more likely than not going to be the person that's the kick the can down the road. Well, it's not the kick the can down the road, but to let him go and draft another running back. Hopefully, maybe you can get tight. Travis Etienne 2.0. Jalen from Tennessee. You might be able to do something like that and have him on another 4 years on that rookie contract. I'm just throwing it out there. And that's a mid to third round, fourth round pick at that point. And yeah, that's probably the route I'm going. So I'm signing Cisco. I'm kicking Tyson Campbell down the road, and I'm letting ETN walk. Maybe take up that 5th year if I need to, but for the most part, that's the route.
I mean, Wiggs, is that where you're at? Do you pay Cisco next? Is that or do you have somebody else that you would consider on the list of needing an extension sooner than later?
No, I would pay. I would actually pay Campbell. Cisco's, I think, is of all those players is my favorite one. I would pay Tyson Campbell because of the positional value of corners. I would just go ahead and get that done now. I take a chance. I do my evaluation. I'd have my people looking at the tape and ask Ryan Nielsen as much as he can evaluate it, just like you're evaluating a free agent. So what I do is pay him first, along with drafting Quinion Mitchell. Now you're telling yourself for the next 4 years we're good at corner, right? Mm-hmm. I would table Cisco if I have to kick it down the road. And I would just have ETN on his 5th-year option. I'd do it because basically you don't have 1 year of service because he got hurt. I get that 5th year and I pay whatever that price is to get it. It ain't going to be incredibly high. And then if you got to tag somebody, I'd rather tag a safety than tag a corner. So that'd be the order I go. I go because of positional value. I go Tyson Campbell first, Cisco second, and ETN third.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned Nielsen in that evaluation. That's the reason why I went corner too. I mean, we hinted at it earlier that Nielsen, being a guy that relies on man defense, man coverage, I should say, a lot more often, corners would have a greater impact in those systems, right? Whereas if you're a defense that relies more on zone, my answer would have been Cisco. And oddly enough, I'm going full corner DB over the corner on the panel here. I wasn't ready for that one. Okay, so there you go. Not everything goes chalk here, gentlemen. I like that. This is what we do here.
It's just weird. It's more of the fact that I think that the Cisco's less of the risk between the two. That's right. Really that's
true.
Reason.
And that's true. That's true. He is. But what I just think what they have to do is they have to trust themselves a little bit more, even though they haven't really drafted well. That's what they're paid to do. If I walk in their office and tell me, can he play? And you go, yeah, we play press man, but we also play a lot of press bail. And if we play press bail, that means he gets to see ball, and we can definitely utilize him. Chris Richards should know very well whether or not that kid can play in his system or not. And sometimes you got to take the Wade Phillips philosophy. You got to just bend your team to fit your players instead of trying to make your players fit your team. And I think if more people did that, the teams will be a lot better off.
Yeah, I can't agree more. I listen, and I mean, listen, you've said it countless times, T-Wig, on Locked On. You don't like looking in the past, but I'm going to do this for my own service because even with my horrible scouting self, I wanted Joey Porter Jr., and we didn't get him at times when he was available. I'm just throwing that out there. Imagine how much better he'd fit to in a Nielsen system with all this coverage stuff in mind. I'm just saying, guys, this is the way I feel. I'm just anyway. But it's interesting. You've stuck your particular flag in pretty well on which corner you would take at 17, Wiggs. And listen, that's the confidence you ask for from the front office, and you're living what you're talking there. I'm with that. But let me go this direction then. And I think I know your answer, especially with you saying that. I preamble that to say this. And I was talking to Travis after the Duval dive last week, and I said something to him. He's like, Kyle, they're not going to like that, but I still want to ask it anyway, and maybe both y'all can throw the rotten tomatoes at me. I mean, listen, I got a little bit of the lemon booty even setting this question up, but at 17, assuming they don't trade up, somebody else, swoops in with a better deal, whatever prevents them from trading up. They aren't able to do it. It wouldn't be the first time Balky got outbid on something. These things happen. Okay. They get to 17. The receiver they don't want isn't there. They make another pick. Let's say it's Mitchell, as you're talking about there. Are the Jags in a position where standing pat at the receiver position with what they have now is something they could go with? And the reason, let me tell you my basis for that. Because when they last made the playoffs, their receivers were Marvin Jones, right? They had just gotten Zay. They had just gotten Christian Kirk. And they had just paid Ingram, if I have my timeline right. And then they also, by the way, NTN, excellent receiver out of the backfield as well, when he's a legitimate threat to run and the linemen actually open up holes. Listen, I'm calling my brethren out on what they didn't do so well last year. That's all it is. Is that a recipe that could work in 24?
I mean, it will have to, right? Unless they come back in the second round and they were able to get somebody. But yeah, they could go line up with Gabe Davis and Zay, along with Christian, with Parker Washington being the fourth guy and Devin Duvernay being guy number 5. They could absolutely line up if they needed to do that. Do you want to is the question. And the question is they could line up with their corners. They're going to have Darnell Savage at the nickel. They can put Ronald Darby at one corner, and the other corner can be Tyson Campbell. They can line up at edge with Gibson, who they got being their third guy, and Abdullah also being in the mix. They can line up. The one thing that Trent has done, Trent Baalke, the GM, he's made it so that they could line up right now and probably be a better team on paper than they were at the end of last year. The issue is that's not what winning a title is about, and that's not what building a champion is about. If you worry about too much, if you worry too much about how you line up next year when you're thinking about this draft choice, then in my opinion, you're making this draft choice about next year like a dynasty fantasy league, as opposed to making it a combination of next year is a part of the future too. So you don't just forget about next year, but you really, really have to allow yourself to say who's going to be better, because everybody you don't pick, you got to play against them. And I keep trying to harp on that. This is not about just filling out squares. Mm-hmm. This is about taking the absolute best player and then letting the chips fall where they're made, whether it be through competition, whether it be through some sort of rotation. At the end of the day, who's on the field with 8 minutes to go in the fourth quarter of a game you have to win? That guy, the guy you let go, and you got to stop him with little old Mr. Check box guy, right? He filled your team out, but bless his heart, it's like marrying a librarian or something. You know what I'm saying? She's always faithful. She's smart. She knows the card catalog all the way. But every now and then on Friday, you have to go down to the little gentleman's club in order to get yourself right and see what you're talking about. So, no, you don't want to have to be sneaking and creeping, right, on your own players. Man. You want to be able to get your guys, show them how to cook. Give me the 10. If I got to bring him in here and I got to, dress him up a little bit and show him how to chill out around company, then that's fine. But I want a 10. Because guess what? Come Sunday, you and your little 7.5 can go out there all you want to. It ain't a thing you and nobody else can do. If they want to beat you, you ain't got no choice.
Well, and let me clarify this too, because first of all, that's a lot of fine points you made in a fashion that can be very easily understood. Let me be clear. My role as the student of the game to bring in somebody that can bring proper knowledge has been fulfilled tonight, and I thank you for that, T-Wiggs. But where I'm going is if they don't have the receiver that's going to fill the gap that they need, which in my opinion, they need another taller body aside from Gabe, because before Gabe arrived, the tallest receiver, and actually I think technically still is Evan Ingram, right? Calvin left, so he's, he was the tall guy before. Jacob Harris never even left the scout team last year. That the whole reason he was there was size. Okay. I feel like if they step in, if they don't get the receiver that fits the gap of talent that they need, and if they were to double down on getting the defense right, getting the secondary where they like it to be, upgrading, I don't know if they need an upgrade at linebacker per se, but something that gives them something other than Foyolukin, because God forbid he starts to actually seem to appear to be a touch mortal and is a little bit slower or misses a game or two because of injury, because he's at the age where that starts to happen. that depth would be nice. If they were to commit to the defensive side rather than focus on getting a home run hitter and let Doug in the offense pistol whip and have proper balance as they did in 22, I feel like that's something that could lead to a championship thing, right? Defense does win championships. That's where I'm coming from.
No, you make a great point. I mean, it does. So, they can decide to focus on the defensive line and then say, you know what, we're like a top 8 unit right now. If we get that, we might be top 4. If that's the way you want to go, and that's what you want to lead with, I have no problem with it. I have no problem with a defensive back. I have no problem with an offensive tackle if we're keeping it a buck, because the actual playing time, the earliest playing time as a full-time starter might be as an offensive tackle on this team more than it is anything else. Because, with the Cam Robinson situation, that could change tomorrow. Or if they get the right guy in the draft, it could change during training camp. So, you could literally beat out the guy in front of you if you better, and they could move on and trade Cam Robinson away. There's a chance that you come in as a wide receiver that you're the third one, maybe even fourth if they don't get rid of Zay, and you got to earn your way through. Now, I'm all about competition. I am all about competition. I just don't want to be stuck thinking about a position without knowing who the names are. And that's why I can't go too much further than saying, if I'm at 17, the only guy I'm absolutely sure about that I'm taking is Quinyon Mitchell, regardless of who else is on the board. I'm telling you, if I'm at 17 and he's there, I'm not even wasting my time looking at the other names. I'm running up there and taking him. Now, if he's not, then we have to start getting to these other situations, whether you want to move back. Of course, don't go beyond 32 because you'll lose your 5th-year option. You want to make sure you do get a pick the night of the draft in the first round. So there's a lot of ways that they could go. I wouldn't be surprised if they went in any direction. Offensive line, wide receiver. The only thing that would surprise me, obviously, is a quarterback or running back. I don't think they're going to do that. And I definitely don't think they're going to take a tight end. But all of those other positions, and linebacker probably off the table too. But you know what I mean. We're going corner, edge, D-tackle, O-line, mainly tackle on O-line.
Right.
Or I guess a guy like Graham Barton, if they move back because he's so versatile and he can do everything, that might intrigue him a little bit. But mainly those are the positions I think they're going to focus on. And then once you narrow the positions down, I think they're going to focus on the people and not the position.
I like that. Well, and let me ask this question too. I've been, this is the last one from me, and I've heard you talk about this a lot on Locked On. Please check out Anthony Wiggins on Locked On Jaguars. It is a great time. It is a good habit. It's one of those things. Listen, don't spend your time smoking your cigarettes with your bad habit. No, instead you kicked on the Locked On Jaguar podcast. You keep you a good habit, and you get educated on your football team. Now, how about that for a plug, Wiggs? Now, with all that in mind, the one thing, and again, let me take it to my house. You talk a lot about the tackles and the offensive line. You've made the statement about the Jags have told you what they think of Walker Little. I couldn't agree with it more. Now, if we want to get into how I feel and how I don't like what they've said they feel about Walker Little, that's a different podcast, not having that conversation. Here's the concept I'm introducing. I think the reason why Walker Little's still in the room, air quotes, the way that he is, the way that he's not, the reason he's not getting shipped or any of that is I think they're keeping Cam Robinson because they don't know what else to do. And if you have Cam Robinson, you're kind of handcuffed to Walker Little, right? Think the Michael Vick, Matt Schaub situation. If you were going to keep Michael Vick in Atlanta at quarterback, you had to make sure you had that backup ready to go to play at least 3 or 4 games every year because of injury. Because Cam Robinson, I like the player. I think he's incredibly talented. He's either missed games or played at less than 100% due to his durability issues. That is what it is. I feel like that makes kind of Walker Little a complementary piece. They've made the choice there with Robinson. They have to kind of hold on to Walker Little as long as they can to make him a proper backup. Am I nuts with that theory?
No, you're not really nuts. I think you're looking at it in a different way. The bottom line is there's a lot of mental gymnastics there. So let me tell you what it is. They're not stuck. They're not stuck to Cam Robinson. Mm-hmm. If they were this sure about Walker Little, Cam Robinson would have been gone and they'd have saved $17 million. They are not stuck with Cam Robinson. They got Walker Little right there on that roster. And in the scenario, you say, well, they keep him around as a convenience or whatever. Well, guess what? They'll lose them both at the end of next season. Walker Little's going to be a free agent. He ain't going to stay here if you ain't gave him a look. But my thing about Trent Baalke is this. There's no way Trent's going to have a draft choice and not give him a look. And then if that look is what you or I might look at it and think is one thing. At that position, there's no way they're going to not treat him right unless they saw something. And the thing is, you got to remember, they got to protect Trevor. Maybe they're saying there's no damn way we can have him and Luke Fortner out there at the same time. Then Trevor gonna need a 38 to play quarterback. That might be what they're saying. But the way I look at it is, when you draft a guy, you give him every single chance, especially a dude that gives you a chance to save $17 million. If he's not in that lineup by now, it's on him.
There's a reason.
There's a reason.
Can't put it much better than that. T-Wiggs, an honor, joy, and privilege. It may not feel like it, but it's already been 35. I kept you extra. I apologize for that. I had to indulge that line question. You had me curious about that for some time. You said it straight. You got the record straight. Please listen to this man's mock draft on Locked On Jaguars. Do yourself a favor. Get yourself some knowledge like I did here as a student of the game. Tell the people where you can be found, Wiggs.
Locked On Jaguars, Locked On NFL on Friday, Locked On Sports Today. We have the first Locked On, now get this, live streaming channel on Locked On Sports Today, which is on YouTube and on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Right now, if you go over there right now, you can see our draft that's going on. I think they're on pick 9, and the Jaguars will be coming up. We're scheduled to go 17, so I can't give you too much information more than that, but go over there and check it out. I think if you watch that draft, how it ebbs and flows, how guys come off the board, then you'll see that when I got to 17, I did what I had to do. And that's a part of this. By just doing this every single day and going through these mocks, it really gives you an understanding of, it's not as easy as just to say, okay, I'm going to go corner here, I'm going to go defensive line here and wide receiver here. And then just look at some list and go name somebody who is coincide, their position on the draft board coincides with these picks, and just say, okay, that's the way that's not the way this works. When you get these individual teams making these choices and people that know these teams and what their tendencies are, is a whole different ballgame to think that you're just going to be able to figure that out. You do it the other way, and it becomes extremely, extremely difficult. That's why I don't wish anything bad on Trent Baalke or anybody else that does this, because these decisions are very, very important, and they're very, very painstaking.
Hey, listen, no, fit matters. Listen, if I have to have a T-shirt, if I draft a T-shirt that's Travis's size, I still don't fit. I get it. Thank you for helping me build that analogy, Wiggs. What can I say, man?
I got you, man. Y'all, thank you for having me, man, and I appreciate it. I'll be back too.
Yes,
absolutely, we'd love to have you when that happens, man. And listen, a great episode. Thanks for jumping in, and we'll catch you next time, Wiggs.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it.
All right, Locked On. We've completed our first session with our first guest, my man. What's up?
30 episodes in, and Wig is our first guest. I love it, baby.
See, I'm glad that he was on here more minutes than we've had episodes. That's true power right there, where he didn't mind staying.
That's dope.
No, listen.
That was a good time.
Travis, anything you want to put on it there to get the last word in? I know you and I both didn't get to talk as much because we were busy listening and taking notes and stuff, man.
I mean, that's what it's about. When you have a guest, you want to give them space to talk. I'm here for that, baby. Come on. And especially when it's someone like an OG like Wig, who got all the stories and all the background and all the knowledge there. Yeah, let's go, man. Come on. I got all the time to talk now. So to his point earlier, when he was already talking about players over positions, and we talked about this in before we even started recording. Sure. I knew that would be the thought process, the overall, but I'm happy to hear him say it's Quinyon Mitchell and then it's Johnny Newton. I'm like, all right, cool. All right, at least because we were in agreement on the Johnny Newton piece already. Like, you know how I feel about that young man.
Yeah. And Quinyon Mitchell, I believe Mel Kiper had actually, your boss Gus Logue even has said it, that he's the pick at 17, which. Right. There seems to be a lot of consensus of him as a fit, but to use another T-Wiggism, it's easy to scout the first round. It's when you're getting later on that the challenge comes. This is how you end up seeing picks like Brandon Strange and Tank
And
Bixby.
Tank Bigsby, yeah. But overall, I actually did agree with the vast majority of what was set up. I mean, we have our small disagreements because we're going to have our disagreements on how to build a team. And if you don't have a disagreement with someone, then you're probably not doing this. Like, you're not doing this well. At the end of the day, like, you're going to have to disagree with someone because you can all watch film and come to different conclusions. That's fine. But I'm in agreement with him. If I had to bet my mortgage on it, yeah, I'm probably going to assume that the team's not going to trade from 17. And the meat and potatoes of where this draft can be won or lost, in my opinion, has always been in that second to third round. Like, trading back. If you want to trade back, don't trade back in round one. It's awesome, and don't get me wrong, it would be beneficial in some ways if you can pick up another second and third. Dope. But if you trade back in a second round, maybe 5 or 6 picks, and you can pick up another third round pick or a fourth round pick, something like that. Because I've done a lot of that in my mock drafts, and you can still pick up 2 more mid-round picks. That is when this thing gets real fun,
Yeah.
and that's where I'm at.
Yeah, listen, I see where you're going with all of that. Too. A question I meant to ask, and I kind of fluffed on it, but I think this is one better suited for you as somebody who's, well, let's put it this way. Give Wiggs all the credit in the world for some of his political, I should say, carefully crafted studies. Well, you just have a different point of view on it.
Yeah.
No care, you're wrong.
Yeah, I caught that.
I joke with, honestly, that's how
Dope.
T-Wiggs is not exactly one to be all to go you're wrong like that. I'm making jokes, obviously.
I know, man.
Whereas Travis and I will obviously tell the other he's wrong, as Travis often is. But
really,
by the way, if you're listening on the pod, please make sure that you go to the YouTube channel for Sartoba Media or Sports Den or Huddle Up Podcast and observe personally the look that Travis just gave me. It was gold. Anyway, no, but the piece where I'm going is, let's say they land Brandon Ayuk, and that ends up being their first round acquisition, right?
Yeah.
Technically not a pick, but it's their first round acquisition. Sure, they got to pay the dude, but as favorable as Josh Allen's extension was, such that it was, I think they could put something together.
Right. It opened up a lot of first year.
Does this suddenly make this offseason the best they've had in 3 years?
Whew. I mean, yeah, you kind of have to say it is, even if that's not, well, you have to say it is because you have one of the best picks that the GM has ever made, in my personal opinion, in Arik Armstead. So you have one of the best picks. You have a very balanced overall free agency, and you use it's technically, this would be I would even have to put Ayuk as part of the draft in reality, because you're trading a draft pick for the player. So it really would depend on what else they did with the draft. Because let's say they got Ayuk and they had the free agency that they had, and then they bombed the draft. Is it still a great offseason?
Well,
it's good.
Let me tell you a similar statement I made last year, and I think this will help answer the question as you pose it from what I think of it. Right, last year I said of the Houston Texans, I know, relax. I said of the Houston Texans, with their acquisition of C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson right up there at the top with all the magic that they did, that if everything else bombs, that draft was a success on those 2 picks. Okay. If they get Ayuk paired with bringing in Eric Armstead, upgrading defensive tackle, let's call it what it is, right?
Right.
Locking up Josh Allen, taking that worry off the table, doing it in a fashion that was relatively team friendly, right?
Yeah, right.
I feel like, oh yeah, by the way, repairing the issues at center.
Right.
And running it back with this offensive line to see if you can see something that they can get actually as a full cohesive front.
Mm-hmm.
Which, based on what Doug Peterson said, is something they had not seen. Now, granted,
I feel what you're putting down.
What's that?
I feel what you're putting down. I do, and I just disagree with it.
Well, just let me hit the dang punchline if you don't mind, fool. No, but like, I think our biggest line of demarcation, because I already knew it too before you said it. That's why I can joke. You're not as high on Ezra Cleveland as I am, point blank. I'm not saying you're down on him. I just said you're not as high. Listen, one can be a great player and still be.
I got you. Yeah, you finish your point. I got mine already locked in the chamber. Let's go.
Oh no, fire away then. I think you're wrong.
all right. So this is interesting for me, man. Because again, I don't believe I can objectively say, hey, this team got better while also saying so did everybody else. And you can be a better team and still be have a worse record. You could be a better team and have a worse season. You
And
can be a
when
better
you say
team and be
everybody else, you mean the AFC
in the I mean the AFC South.
Okay.
So I mean you can be a better team than last year and still be the third best team in this in this division. And that is saying something to me.
I'm going to see that and raise you this, though. Okay.
Mhm.
And you can we can nitpick on whether or not Indy's truly better yet. On paper, maybe we
True.
still don't really know. I
True.
feel like they are, but I would also argue one could get better and still be dirty hot dog water.
Correct. So
Which
when
is
you were saying it's a successful offseason, I'm like, that's great that it was a successful offseason or a successful free agency. I should say because I still can't say that that's a successful draft without knowing at least one other starting player who
remember the premise was you got Ayuk.
Right. So I'm saying Ayuk is one pick. In my head, I'm looking at Ayuk as part of the draft. Ayuk, that's one player. Cool. Who's the other one? Who's the other player in the draft? Not free agency.
Let's say they all don't land. Right.
It's a failed draft again.
Okay.
And I say again because this is Trent.
But does this make the off season as a whole with a failed draft?
Yes.
What they have, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And I know a lot of people will say, well, no, this has been a great offseason or a fine offseason. Yeah, if you want to look at it in the vacuum. Yeah, if you want to look at it with teal glasses, but I'm not that guy.
And I'm looking at it. Remember the premise of the question. You're dodging again. Past 3 years.
I'm just saying, and man, we've already established the fact that Trent Baalke has had this get out of jail free card locked and loaded for all 3 years he's been here because he's had basically a Scrooge McDuck piggy bank of money. He can just throw it to the guys when he makes a mistake in the draft. So we established this already. If you got this, this gold coin vault of evil layer that downstairs, then yeah, of course you're gonna. If you miss on this draft pick, cool. I throw some money at Morris. I miss on this, this whatever, this linebacker pick, that's fine. I'll throw some more money at Foyer. I miss on this, I throw money there, and over and over and over. But eventually the bill comes due, baby. Now we're in the void year game. That wasn't a thing previously. Like, these are ways that you're slowly covering for your misses in the draft. So if he again misses in the draft, I don't care what you did in free agency. That bill's gonna come due. Like, unless you win a Super Bowl, and I don't believe that would be a Super Bowl roster, it's a failed offseason. And that's line in the sand how I feel.
Now, let me turn the dial on the machine a little bit to get where we'll agree.
Okay.
I'm not sure I necessarily agree with your philosophy, though you make a lot of great points. But if I'm Travis Holmes, my answer is, of course it's the best offseason the past 3 years, Kyle. The bar's too low. The past 3 off seasons haven't been that good.
Well, I like the Christian Kirk Foyer off season, like I did. So I can't say it's like a very low bar.
You gotta add Zay in there too.
Sorry, Zay. I just was the name in the top 2 names. Yes, I like that off season. We even with the Arden Key signing, like I like that off season. So that's not So that's not a low bar. I'm not trying to say that but again, it's about draft and free agency. And overall, you lost Calvin Ridley. You gained Gabe Davis. Gabe is a good player, but Gabe's not Calvin Ridley. That is a downgrade.
And I'm glad you brought that up. I want to touch on that quickly here before we wrap up. For all the people out there, especially those, listen, friends don't let friends listen to ESPN. Okay. No, Mac Jones was never a replacement for freaking Trevor Lawrence. Morons.
Of course not.
Just in the same
time. And Gabe is not for Ridley. No.
There you go. But too many people think that, especially amongst the Duval devout. That's not what the pick was there for. Okay. That's not what that bringing in Gabe was meant to do. 2 things. A, keep the height that they lost in the receiver core, because no disrespect to my guy Christian Kirk, but the receiver core on the whole, not that tall. Right.
Give them somebody to attack the scenes. Yeah, and he can attack the scenes unlike anybody else on the roster.
There you go. Point blank. And that's a need they have. And between him and Ingram, they can kind of fake that. I'm with that part. Piece 2 is to get some toughness to block on the outside. And bring that balance back. Make Etienne great again. Sure, we expect him to not be here in 3 more years, but make
him great while he's here and get that man paid. I'm sure his mama will love that too. That's okay.
Here's a call, Mama. Kyle and Travis argued for it.
Yes, Mama ETN, we trying to get your boy paid. I promise.
And man, listen, I like Travis. When he got his 100-yard game, I asked him how much it meant to his growth. It was the game right after J-Rob was officially a Jet, like he called.
Like we called it a week before it happened, and everybody told me I was crazy.
Well, not everybody.
I know, but Tuesday, I'm begging you to write an article on it and put it out there. I'm like, no, man, they are going to trade him. They are going to trade J-Rob. I promise you, it's going to happen. I'm hearing it. That's what they're telling me.
I showed you the draft of the article. I'm not going to name
and
names.
They traded him the next morning.
Yeah, I'm not going to name names, but they didn't post it that Sunday night. And sure enough, in pure Ron Jeremy fashion, you had nailed it, sir. So
I looked that man, I looked coach right in his eyes, and I'm like, nah, man. He didn't say he didn't say he was hurt. He said this, and that's what I hate about a lot of this stuff. When you hear what someone says, don't put your own spin on it. I'm listening to his words, and if his words did not answer the question, either I'm asking for confirmation or I'm saying something ain't right about that.
That article went up, you would have been listening to Coach Peterson, and when we were seen to be right, you would have been doing the Dougie. See what I did there? Dad joke of the night. Boom.
Lord.
Anyways, this was a fun one, man.
Oh man,
we'll do more, but I got to do the student of the game here shortly.
Oh yes, you do, man.
But Travis, tell the world where you can be found.
Man, I can be found on all the socials. Travis D. Holmes, as it says right here. Facebook, Twitter, etc., or X, whatever. You can find my writings covering it.
Don't be telling people you're on X. You're a family man.
Oh man, there's a lot of these dads who are X on family man. I don't know, whatever. I ain't gonna do that. Yeah, but anyways, you can find my writings covering the Jacksonville Jaguars on BigCatCountry.com. Take a look at the summary of Trevor Lawrence's and Foyer Luacon's their voluntary off-season press conferences that took place on Tuesday. Pretty good write-up on that one, if I must say so myself, and I do because I wrote it.
You said so yourself. I have to do another bing. There you go. Right.
Appreciate that.
We'll get more in depth on that on Friday too, where I expect fewer than 3 bings from you, Travis Holmes. Okay.
Look forward to it.
Bing. There you go.
That's where you could be found.
Oh, yeah, of course. I'm Kyle Nash, the student of the game. You can find me on Twitter at the SOTG, Threads, and Instagram, the SOTG, as on Facebook as the student of the game. Check out my writings with the Jaguar Report, 3-point conversion, and the black and gold banneret. My recent work on the UCF spring game is up there on the banneret. Just did an appearance on the Mark Moses show in Melbourne on AM 1640 The Game. I think I forget the call numbers right there. Just check my Twitter account. I retweeted it there. Look at that. Special thanks also to the Sports Den, as well as A7B in Sports and the 3-point conversion iHeart channel for your work broadcasting us on your streams and or radio channels as such. Of course, shouts to Huddle Up and Sertobo Media for continuing to do the same. And by the way, the SOTG has a Twitch account. How about that? You can see this on there as well if you want to take time. And all that. I'm in my 40s. I got a Twitch. There we go.
And of course, a final shout out to T-Wiggs for joining us on this 30th episode, man. We appreciate you, bro.
Not just a shout out, but a thank you to T-Wiggs, Angela Smith, Deuce Bigelow 02, Primetime Mac, and Kesso, all for your entrance here in the comments. I did not pay much attention to them because I was enamored listening to T-Wiggs. For that, I apologize.
I know you're going to your other pod. You got time for one?
What's that?
You got time for one question?
Okay, go.
From the comments.
Oh, well, I mean, it's not really a question so much as it's a statement. The Jags have to nail the draft to build on the good offseason moves they made in free agency.
Okay.
I mean, Deuce agrees with you, homie.
I think I do.
That's why I didn't do it. It was easy stuff, man. Oh, and a quick shout, of course, from Sertoba Media's own Drew Willingham. What's going on, my guy? The man in charge of doing the Total Football Talk. There we go. I helped co-host this past Tuesday morning. That'll be switching to April 22nd at 4 o'clock. On April 22nd at 4 o'clock, switching to Mondays. So there you go. Making sure we got to give him his shouts on that. Also, the host of the Commanders Gridiron Report.
Yes, we love you.
The Red Tails Rundown, as I like to call it, because the Commanders is a terrible football team name. Anyways,
and shout out Queso too.
Yeah. Oh no, we got Queso earlier, but I think that'll wrap it up. Until next time, everybody. In honor joy and privilege, but class dismissed.